All right, so welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we are tackling something that I thought was really interesting from Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah.
It's Law 46, never appear too perfect,
Oh.
which is kind of counterintuitive, right?
Right.
You would think that in the pursuit of power, you always want to be putting your best foot forward,
Yeah.
always want to be striving to be at the top of your game.
Absolutely.
Um, but this law suggests there's a little more nuance to it than that.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
That it kind of challenges that whole like go big or go home mentality.
Right.
Because Greene argues that appearing too perfect can actually trigger this like envy and resentment in other people and ultimately undermine your power.
So it's not just enough to be successful.
Right.
We also have to manage how other people perceive our success.
Yeah, exactly. And to understand why, we have to kind of tap into a little bit of basic human psychology.
Okay.
We're naturally drawn to people who achieve great things, but that admiration often comes with a bit of a dark side.
So what's going on beneath the surface then when someone appears too perfect?
Well, we just think about it. When we see someone who seems to have it all, right? Like the talent, the success,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even good looks and charisma,
Yeah.
it can trigger this comparison in our own minds.
Mm-hmm.
And we might start to feel inadequate or envious or even threatened.
I can see that. Yeah. It's like that saying, comparison is the thief of joy.
Right.
But I guess in this case, it's not just stealing joy. It's potentially creating these negative emotions that could lead to actions
Exactly.
that impact that person.
Right. Precisely. Those feelings of envy or inadequacy, they can manifest in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
People might gossip, they might sabotage,
Right.
or even just try to, bring that person down a notch or two just to make themselves feel better.
So how do you stay on top then?
Right.
Using this law as a guide without making everyone else feel bad. I
Yeah.
mean, does that mean you got to like intentionally hold yourself back?
Not necessarily. It's not about being like mediocre or
Yeah.
downplaying your accomplishments or anything.
Right.
It's about finding ways to kind of humanize yourself
Okay.
and manage those perceptions.
Greene also talks about Marie Antoinette as this cautionary tale,
Yes.
right? How does her story, I mean, she was in a royal court.
Right.
How does that reveal this human dynamic that plays out
Yeah.
even in our more, normal modern lives?
Well, Marie Antoinette's story is really a classic example of how this perceived perfection can backfire,
Okay.
especially when it's coupled with this disconnect from the struggles of everyday people.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was accurate or not, she was seen as being very extravagant and out of touch during a time of widespread suffering in France.
Right.
And that gap, that contrast, just fueled resentment and ultimately contributed to her downfall.
Such a powerful example.
Yeah.
So even if someone is genuinely talented and successful, if they're not careful about how they present themselves, it can breed this envy and resentment.
Right.
And that can have some pretty serious consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so it seems like this disconnect between perception and reality can really be damaging.
Yeah.
But how does this apply to us regular folks?
Right.
We're not exactly living in palaces, right?
Right.
It's not like my coworkers are going to storm my cubicle if I do well on a project or something.
Well, maybe not storming your cubicle, but
Right.
even in, more mundane settings like the workplace, this dynamic can still play out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're consistently the top performer.
Okay.
You never seem to struggle.
Right.
You always have the answer.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's great to be competent,
Yeah.
but there's a risk there of coming across as unrelatable
Yeah.
or even arrogant, which can create distance between you and your colleagues.
So it's almost like you have to find a way to be successful without making other people feel like less than.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it really my responsibility to manage other people's feelings about my success?
It's not about coddling anyone or being inauthentic,
Right.
but it's about recognizing, I think, the power of what we might call strategic vulnerability.
Okay.
It's about finding these moments where you can show a little bit of humanity, a little humility without undermining your competence.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this strategic vulnerability.
Okay.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, think of someone like Keanu Reeves.
Yep.
He's incredibly successful, talented,
Yeah.
wealthy,
Uh-huh.
But he's also known for his humility,
Right.
his kindness, his willingness to kind of poke fun at himself.
Yeah.
He doesn't shy away from showing vulnerability,
Right.
and that just makes him seem more relatable, more likable.
But couldn't there be a downside to that?
Sure.
Like, isn't there a risk of appearing too relatable?
Yeah.
And could that undermine someone's authority,
Right.
especially if they're in like a leadership position?
That's a great question, and it really speaks to the nuance of this law. It's not about becoming everyone's best friend or airing all your dirty laundry or anything.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Mm-hmm.
where you're demonstrating competence without arrogance,
Okay.
success without aloofness.
Okay.
It's about controlled imperfection.
Controlled imperfection. I
Right.
like that. So it's about choosing those moments where you reveal a bit of vulnerability,
Exactly.
make yourself more relatable, but not so much that you undermine your credibility.
Precisely. It's about being strategic,
Okay.
intentional about how you present yourself.
Greene also mentions John F. Kennedy
Yes.
as an example of someone who really successfully navigated this.
Right?
How did he embody that controlled imperfection?
Well, JFK was known for his charisma and his leadership,
Mm,
but he also allowed the public to see his struggles.
right.
He spoke openly about his chronic pain.
Uh-huh.
He even acknowledged mistakes that he had made during his presidency.
Wow.
And that vulnerability, it just made him more human, more relatable in the eyes of the public, which in turn strengthened their admiration for him.
That's a great point. It's not about pretending to be perfect.
Right.
It's about showing your human side
Uh-huh.
while still maintaining your competence.
Exactly.
So what are some specific things that people can do
Right.
to kind of put this into practice?
Yeah.
Greene offers 5 actionable tips
Yes. Yes.
to navigate this delicate balance.
Yeah. And I think they're incredibly valuable for kind of navigating this whole thing.
Okay, so let's dive in.
Okay.
The first one is show humility.
Yes.
What does that look like in our day-to-day lives?
Well, showing humility is about giving credit where credit's due,
Mm.
acknowledging your mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and just avoiding arrogance.
Right.
It's about recognizing that you don't have all the answers and that you're always learning.
It's funny because in a world that often rewards like self-promotion and bravado,
Right.
humility can almost seem like a weakness.
I agree. It can feel very counterintuitive, especially when we're constantly bombarded with messages about the importance of, hustling and winning.
Right?
But I think there's a quiet power in being able to admit when you're wrong
Yeah.
or when you need help.
It's like that saying, the only people who never make mistakes are the ones who never try anything new.
Exactly. And when you show humility,
Yeah.
you're also modeling that behavior for others,
Mm-hmm.
which can create a more collaborative and supportive environment.
All right, what about the second tip?
Okay, the second tip is to share small struggles.
Okay.
Now, this doesn't mean complaining constantly or turning every conversation into a therapy session or anything,
Right.
but it's about selectively revealing challenges that you've faced or that you're currently facing,
Yeah.
things that other people can relate to.
So, for example, instead of bragging about how I aced a presentation, I might mention that I was feeling nervous beforehand
Exactly.
and that I had to practice a ton.
Right, you're still highlighting your success,
Mm,
but you're also showing that it didn't come easy
right,
and that you have, the same doubts and anxieties as everyone else.
right.
It humanizes you.
I can definitely see how that would make someone more approachable.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next on Greene's list?
The third tip is to avoid excessive flaunting.
Gotcha.
This one can be especially tricky in the age of social media.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right.
It's like everyone's living their best life all the time.
Yeah, where it's so easy to get caught up in curating this perfect image online.
Right. But we all know that's not reality.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that constantly showcasing, your successes, your possessions, your perfect moments,
Yeah.
it can actually trigger these feelings of inadequacy and resentment in other people.
Right.
So it's about finding a balance between celebrating your achievements
Mm-hmm.
and being mindful of how it might be perceived.
So it's not about hiding your success
Right.
or pretending to be unhappy.
Oh, no.
It's about being thoughtful about how you share it.
Exactly, because in the end, genuine connection is more valuable than superficial admiration.
Okay, I'm ready for tip number 4.
Okay, the fourth tip is deflect resentment.
Deflect resentment.
This is about recognizing when you might be triggering envy in others
Uh-huh.
and actively taking steps to mitigate it.
Okay, so how do you do that without seeming fake or insincere?
Right.
I mean, if someone compliments you on a job well done,
Yeah,
you don't want to just brush it off.
of course not. It's about finding ways to acknowledge the compliment
Mm-hmm.
without making it all about you.
Right.
You could say something like, thanks. I really appreciate that. But I couldn't have done it without the support of my team.
Oh, okay.
Or I learned so much from this project, I'm grateful for the opportunity.
So you're deflecting the attention away from yourself and onto either other people
Right.
or the process itself.
Exactly. It's a subtle but powerful way to kind of shift the focus
Hmm.
and diffuse potential resentment.
It's clever. All right, we've got one more tip to go.
Okay.
What's number 5?
The fifth and final tip is be strategic with vulnerability.
Be strategic with vulnerability.
Oh, okay. Now, we touched on this earlier with Keanu Reeves and JFK.
Right.
But how do you actually do this in practice without undermining your competence?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too.
Yeah.
Where's the line between strategic vulnerability and just oversharing?
It's about finding those moments where you can reveal small flaws or imperfections
Okay.
that humanize you without undermining your competence or authority.
Okay.
For example, you might share a story about a time you made a mistake and learn from it,
Mm-hmm.
or admit that you're feeling nervous about an upcoming presentation.
Okay. Wouldn't sharing a small struggle, like
Hmm.
feeling overwhelmed with work, seem inauthentic if it's purely strategic?
Well, it's not about fabricating struggles.
Okay.
The key here is to be authentic and genuine.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to manipulate anyone.
Right.
You're simply choosing to share those moments that highlight your human side.
Okay.
Remember, everyone experiences challenges, setbacks, anxieties.
Mm.
By sharing yours, you're creating a connection with others
Right.
and showing that you're not immune to the same human experiences.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
So it's about being mindful of what you share,
Right.
when you share it,
Uh-huh.
and with whom you share it.
Absolutely. It's about being intentional and thoughtful about how you present yourself to the world.
Okay.
And it's worth noting that this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach.
Mm-hmm.
You might choose to be more vulnerable with close colleagues or friends than you would be with clients or superiors.
Right.
It's about reading the room
Yeah.
and being sensitive to the context.
Greene also discusses how modern business leaders put this law into practice.
Yes.
Can you share some examples?
Yeah, he highlights figures like Richard Branson and Elon Musk, who are known for openly discussing their failures and challenges.
Which seems counterintuitive.
Right.
We often think of successful leaders as being invincible.
Right.
So how does admitting to failures actually help?
Well, by being transparent about their struggles, they actually build trust and loyalty with their followers.
Okay.
They're showing that they're not afraid to be vulnerable, that they're not putting on this facade of perfection.
Right.
And that's incredibly refreshing, especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with images of success and achievement.
So they're basically saying, hey, I'm just like you. I screw up sometimes, but I learn from my mistakes and I keep going.
Exactly. And that message can be incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
especially for those who might be struggling with their own self-doubt or fear of failure.
So ultimately, it's not about hiding your success or
Mhm.
pretending to be someone you're not.
Right.
It's about finding ways to make your success more relatable and less threatening to others.
Yes. And I think that's a really important takeaway from this whole discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Power isn't just about being great.
Right.
It's about managing how others feel about your greatness.
It's like a delicate dance
It is.
between confidence and humility,
Yeah.
competence and vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And finding that balance can be incredibly empowering.
Wow, so much to think about after this deep dive into Law 46.
Yeah.
It seems like managing perceptions is just as crucial as achieving success itself.
Absolutely. It really is.
Maybe even more so.
Especially in a world that is, so obsessed with image.
Greene almost argues that power isn't just about what you do,
Right.
but how you make other people feel about what you do.
It is. And that brings us to some, interesting ethical considerations.
Oh, okay.
If no one's truly perfect, where's the line when it comes to presenting a less than perfect image?
That's a great point.
Is it genuine connection or is it manipulation?
Right. On one hand, we've been talking about authenticity
Right.
and relatability.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, there's this level of strategy involved.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like you're choosing how people see you.
Right. It's complex. It
Yeah.
really makes you think about that balance
Mm-hmm.
between, being true to yourself and being savvy about these human dynamics, especially in a power structure.
I guess so much of it comes down to self-awareness then.
Yeah.
Like understanding your own intentions,
Right.
the impact that your actions might have on other people,
Mm-hmm.
and making conscious choices about how you present yourself to the world.
Well said. I think that's, finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
between who you are and how you navigate the world, that's where the real power lies.
Okay, listeners, so next time you hit a home run, don't just pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
Think about how you're going to share it.
Right.
Are you inviting admiration?
Right.
Or are you potentially inviting envy?
It's a question worth asking. Because in the end, the kind of power I think we all want
Right.
is that which is built on respect, genuine trust, true connection.
That, my friends, is wisdom.
Is.
Worthy of a mic drop.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Until next time.